So I'm going to wait a few more minutes, just hopefully a few more people will trickle in. If not, it'll be the two of us, which is fine too.
Okay,
I kind of sometimes like,
no problem.
more one-on-one conversations sometimes anyway, so that'll work out for us also.
There you go. No problem.
How's your day going so far?
Pretty good. So far, so good. Trying to finish up a couple things for class for like this last week, but so far so good.
Good.
How about yours?
It's going pretty good. I can't complain. Just finishing up some projects and a couple of presentations or, seminars of this nature. So
Yes. You know how the other one that was last week? I think
mhm.
Jordan did that one, but I think that one was for letters. Do you know if a lot of people attended that one?
I have not sure. This is my second one this year. So the first one I did, I'm not sure. Were you at that one? Your name looks familiar.
Yeah.
With me? Yeah. I
Mm-hmm.
think it was 3 or 4 of us at
Yes.
that one. And I'm not sure
Mm-hmm.
who was at the other one before, the one that Jordan did for the events. I'm not sure how many people attended that one. So
I think this is only the second one for the advance, no?
um, it could be. I know I've done one for events, and then this is another one for events. So
Okay.
I think it's like 2 each per quarter. So this might be the second one for this quarter.
Yeah, I think so. Because I know I did the regular ones, but I was going to try to attend the regular leaders just like as a refresher.
Right.
So I wasn't sure. Let me see.
Hi, Stephanie.
Hey, Hannah, how are you doing?
Good. How are you?
Hey.
Good. So we'll start in 1 more minute. 1 minute will give us 5 after, so then we'll go ahead and get started.
Okay, I couldn't sign on at first.
Oh, no worries. I'm gonna share my screen just so that you guys can see PowerPoint that we have for today.
Hi, Maribel.
Hi, Stephanie. How are
I'm in
you?
the dark.
Oh, it's okay. You're right, Hannah. It is 2 per quarter. I think the last time we had was the one for emotional intelligence.
Right. Yeah, I knew it's usually we try to like even it out by having like 2 per quarter.
Okay, wait a minute. So this is not the Evan.
Yeah, this is the advance.
This.
Because I'm like, Hannah, you was in the Golden Leaders, I mean, the Eagles last year. You facilitated
I facilitated one of the financial ones last quarter.
uh-huh.
Yes, I remember.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, because I'm looking at the Golden Leaders. I'm like, okay, wait a minute, it
Yeah.
don't make sense.
We have it's four of us that facilitate, and so we all have a certain amount of ones that we facilitate either within advance or within merging.
Okay, cool.
So it's 6 after, so we'll go ahead and get started. So it's the 2 of us today, which is totally fine. I try to make it a little bit more conversational, just how it was the last time. So feel free to chime in whenever you like. Feel free to either, take your mic off if you have a question, or if you want to use the functions of raising your hand. I'll definitely pay attention to that as well, so that you can go ahead and ask any questions, or if you have comments based on what we're talking about, you feel free to do so. So today's Golden Eagle Leaders workshop is going to be on microaggressions with a concentration of intent versus impact. And I'm going to be facilitating today. Both of you have met me before, but my name is Hannah Wilson, and I am the Assistant Director of Student Engagement here at National Louis University. So within today's workshop, we're going to be focusing on microaggressions. So we're going to be going over the definition of microaggressions, the characteristics of microaggressions, its impact on individuals and our society. And then also we're going to be discussing inclusive language versus political correctness. And then we're going to end the day with any questions you guys might have. But like I mentioned before, feel free to ask questions throughout the day as well. This particular session today is frameworked within the fact that we believe that systematic and institutionalized social inequality exists and is supported and perpetuated through power, privilege, and oppression. If we are committed to social justice, then we must be engaged in self-reflection about our own society, identity, and positionality. So we're not here to prove, if we believe microaggressions exist or if it doesn't. Everybody has their own opinions about the thoughts of microaggressions, but we're here to discuss that our minds and our thoughts are orchestrated through power, privilege, and oppression. And it's up to us individually to self-reflect and to educate ourselves so that we're making sure that in all things that we're paying attention to how things are perceived from others and how they're perceived from ourselves as well. So our community guidelines. It's 2 of us today, so we want to make sure that we let you guys know that this is definitely a safe space, a safe community. So you have the challenge by choice. So feel free to engage as much as possible and share as much as possible. When you don't feel comfortable sharing, do not share. But if you feel comfortable sharing, you definitely have the option and definitely feel free to do so. Listen actively and use I statements, making sure that you are listening actively to what people are saying. And when it's time for you to make statements, make sure that you are making a statement that's positioning from your own standpoint and not generalizing that it's everybody's opinion, but that we know that this is what your thoughts are. So make sure that you're using I statements when you are making statements about anything that we are discussing on today. So no one is an empty vessel. As I mentioned before, feel free to share. We all have our own experiences and we all have something that we can bring to the table in this conversation. All of us at some point have something to say when it comes to this topic. So feel free to explain or talk as much as you can because we want to hear your thoughts and we want to hear your experiences. So feel comfortable to share if you like, because we all have something to bring to the table centered around this conversation. Suspend judgment of others or their opinions. All of us have a different opinion. All of us, see things differently. None of us see things the same way. So make sure that you are suspending any judgment that you might have versus based on anybody's opinions or thoughts. If people make comments or ask questions or anything that you don't agree with, sit back and analyze before you make comments, and then also try your best not to judge anything that anybody is saying, because like I mentioned before, none of us are the same and we all have our own opinions about anything that's going to be discussed today. And respect confidentiality. Yes, we are taping today's event. However, this is only for people that are here today and for people who are in the Golden Eagle Leaders program. So please make sure that you're respectful of people's confidentiality. If people are sharing things that has happened in their past or has happened to them, make sure that you respect confidentiality as far as being able to make sure that what stays here or stays within the Golden Eagle Leaders community stays within the Golden Eagle Leaders community. So what is microaggressions? Have you all heard of microaggressions? Like before we started this, before you guys knew about we were going to have this topic on microaggressions, had you all known about microaggressions? Had heard the term microaggression? Yes,
Well,
no?
we heard it in the in our Golden Eagle Leaders Workshop, the initial one that we I guess we graduated from, so to speak.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you had heard the term microaggression. So you've
Correct.
heard the term microaggression through another Golden Eagle Leaders Workshop. Has you all heard about microaggressions maybe from work or from TV or just from society, period?
No, I had not.
I had not.
Okay.
I had not either.
Okay.
But
So, give you context of what microaggressions is. According to Dr. Sue, racial microaggressions are brief and commonplace daily, verbal, behavioral, or environmental identities, whether intentional or unintentional, that communicate hostile, derogatory, or negative racial, gender, sexual orientation, and religious slights and insult towards a target population. So, microaggressions are verbal, behavioral, or environmental slights. They are often automatic or intentional. They often occur briefly in a stance or on a daily basis. And like I mentioned before, they are hostile, derogatory, and usually produce a negative standpoint or viewpoint. Okay? When you guys hear this right now, what are your thoughts on microaggressions? Like, as of right now, can you think of what a microaggression might be? Anybody might have a thought on what a
Uh,
microaggression might be?
I think one would be, this was told to someone before, um, a white person saying it to a Black person, in that the funeral, so the funeral was within a few days after the person died, after the Black person died, and then the white person mentioned to the Black person that usually Black people take a long time to bury their relatives. Isn't that how? So I thought that was aggressive,
Yeah, definitely. I could definitely see.
inappropriate.
Yeah, I could definitely see how that can be considered a microaggression because you're singling out a group of people and using something negative towards a group of people. So yes, that definitely could be considered a microaggression. Does anybody else have, a thought of what a microaggression could be?
yes, way years ago at my church, um, a minister married evangelist, and when the Lord told her that she had to evangelize, He said that women couldn't be in the pulpit. A woman's place in the church is to just sit down and be quiet.
Hmm. Yeah. I actually have heard that before, and I'm glad you brought that up because I never even looked at that as being a microaggression. And now that you put that into perspective, I can definitely see that as being a microaggression. I can't wait to talk about that with somebody else. And so we could discuss how that is actually a microaggression. But yes, definitely, that is definitely a microaggression. So to dive deeper into microaggressions, there are three characteristics of microaggression. So, well, actually, four. So first, we're going to discuss intent versus impact. What do you guys think when you hear like intent versus impact? Like, what comes to mind when you hear this?
Like what is meaning to do versus the outcome of
Exactly. So it's like your intent versus your impact. So it's like, oh, my intentions was X, Y, and Z. However, what that did cause a negative impact on an individual. So saying something like, like you mentioned before, saying that, African Americans, oh, I didn't know African Americans took so long to bury, I thought they did it right away. You call yourself saying something positive, in all actuality, that's a negative, that's a negative impact. Or saying something like, oh, like, how they say, stereotypes, they'll say that Pacific Islanders are really good, at math. And then if they're not, you're saying something in intent, but really the outcome of that is negative because all Asians, all Pacific Islanders might not be all that great at math. So, those certain things can leave a negative impact. So you have to always be mindful of the impact of your intent. So intent versus impact. So verbal, non-verbal, environmental, not usually over forms of discrimination or bigotry, physically violence or hate crimes. A system of institutionalized and systematic racism, sexism, homophobia, as well as socialization. So a lot of times these ideas that people have, a lot of times it's not coming sometimes from a negative standpoint within their minds. It's what they've been conditioned to believe. It's what they've been told through society or told growing up. And so they take the things that they've been taught or what they've been learned, and then they're saying these things when they haven't actually been able to educate themselves to understand the impact that it has when they say these things. The picture at the bottom, so for example, someone will say, so where are you really from? So sometimes, you see someone and they might not look like an American. So you say to them, oh, so where are you really from? And the person is saying, oh, I'm from America. No, where are you really from? That's a microaggression, because just because they look different or they talk different does not mean they're not American. So that's when things become the intent versus impact, when you have to really think about what you say, think about your actions, because you don't want to prove that negative impact. Any questions so far?
Hannah, I thought that you were going to say, when you said, where are you from? And the person say, excuse me, well, excuse me, I'm from the south side. Oh, they ghetto over there. Or I'm from the north side. Oh, they gay over there. That's what I thought you was going to say.
Yeah. Well, see, sometimes, and that's diving in a little bit deeper. Because see, sometimes with a microaggression, a lot of times a person, and it really depends, but sometimes with a microaggression, they're not really, in all actuality, trying to be hateful sometimes. So when they'll say, oh, they're really ghetto over there, they'll know that's actually being offensive. You know what I mean? Dive a little bit deeper, like you're actually really, really being offensive. But sometimes when you say, oh, oh, you're the person looks Asian, but they talk and they're like, oh, you speak really good English, stuff like that. It's like, well, I speak really good English because I'm American. That's why I speak good English. So sometimes microaggressions, you know, they are definitely rooted in systematic racism and sexism, but I think sometimes individuals really are not thinking they're doing something wrong. So if they, in their mind, they might say, oh, the people on the south side is the ghetto, but they know if they verbalize that, they are outrightly being negative to an individual. Most of the time microaggressions are unconscious and not conscious. But on the next slide, we're going to talk about the 3 different forms of microaggressions, and it'll talk about the unconscious versus the conscious forms of microaggressions. So characteristics of microaggressions. So we have micro insults. So that's saying, oh, you are so good at math for a girl. That's often unconscious because they think that they're saying something positive. They're not trying to hurt an individual's feelings. They really think that they're saying something positive. So a lot of times they're saying something that they think is a positive, but it's actually a demeaning message to an individual identity or a group. So saying something like, oh, you have really, really nice hair for a Black girl. For us, that's rude, but they unconsciously think that they're telling us something positive. Then other one that we have is micro-invalidization. So this is post-racial anything, okay? This is also often unconscious. And so, example, you're not really Black. How can you tell somebody they're not Black? You know what I'm saying? Or denying an individual's lived experience. So, for example, African Americans might, discuss different things that has happened to them in the past, or for example, what happens to Trayvon Martin. That's something that becomes very dear to us, but then somebody unconsciously might discuss that in a way that doesn't seem as important. And so that becomes a microaggression when you are denying an individual's lived experience or an individual's thoughts or experience about something that might happen. So it's dismissing one's feelings or thoughts in reality. So if we're also, for example, if you are the Hispanic community and you are dismissing, children getting taken away from their parents, and you are looking at that experience as not being that big of an issue, then you are having microimmunization. That means that you are dismissing one's feelings about an issue that is happening or that is going on. We also have microassault. So this is conscious, which means that you are deliberately doing this. So this means that you are causing, stating negative slurs or calling people out of their name, using slurs that we know are very derogatory based on the history of those words, or using jokes. For an example, a lot of times, and this can be a racism of that African Americans, and their connection with fried chicken or something like that, or watermelon or something like that, that becomes a micro assault because you're cracking a joke and you're consciously cracking that joke. And like I mentioned before, a lot of this is old-fashioned discrimination. So this is discrimination that has been accumulated through history. This is history discrimination that we all know about. And so that's why we know that it's conscious, because as an individual that's doing this, you know what you are doing. Any questions so far? I know that was a lot at one time. Any questions so far? No? So I want to show you guys a quick video. See if I can pull it up here. Is everybody able to see my screen? Can I get a thumbs up if you can see my screen?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, we did see your where the characteristics of microaggressions, and I see the link, but then nothing happens when you click the link.
Okay, hold on. Give me 1 second so I can pull up this. All right, this should do it.
About all men.
We've been getting shot by the police.
1 second. Okay, here we go.
Just seems like something The Onion came up with. Just putting the word micro in front of aggression. Because it's not a big aggression, it's just a micro one.
Microaggression is supposed to be small, seemingly innocent, sometimes unintentional, naive or ignorant interactions.
The things that are done unintentionally that can be viewed as derogatory, pejorative.
I think microaggressions are bullshit. I'm sorry, I'm trying not to curse, but that is it's just too much of, just over explaining your ignorance. Microaggressions, I don't think, when you're receiving it, they're not micro. I think it's easier for the person who was doing it to use that term.
Microaggressions to me are sort of like those small little actions or comments that communicate to people that they're less than or aren't worthy.
One of my Black students, she often gets approached and told that she's very articulate. And so there's a microaggression there because it comes from people who just, unknown to them, automatically assume that a lot of Black people are not very articulate.
You're so smart, you're so eloquent. And I feel like the piece that they're leaving off is like, despite that, you're a woman of color. Oh, you're standing out from this group of people that I had previously thought something else of.
It's like when people tell me that I don't act like a regular black person.
Oh, you look like you came out of the African gallery. As beautiful as, you know, my ancestry and my culture is. And good for you working here. Good for you. A lot of that.
They may not feel like much individually, but they add up. And to me, they are little fractures that spotlight racism. We see that you do think another is inferior or that you are superior.
It's traumatizing. And it's also just kind of a constant reminder that the world you walk in and you live in wasn't made for you and isn't always safe for you.
It makes me feel like I don't belong in the country that I was born in. Microaggressions to me are asking, wouldn't I like to let my hair down just once? Or wouldn't I like to wear a swimsuit on a beach just once? I'm suddenly reminded that I'm not seen for my character or for my actions or for how good I am as a person. Rather, I'm just seen for the headscarf that's on my head.
I say, oh, like, I can definitely see that you may be Asian because I can tell, like, by your eyes. Is that a microaggression?
You think you're giving a compliment, but you're really not.
It's like, oh, you're so exotic looking.
Like when a guy will tell me that I'm pretty, and then he'll say like, oh, so what are you mixed with? And I'm like, I'm black. That's a microaggression. Like they're basically trying to tell you that just being pure black, you can't be beautiful. You have to be mixed with something.
People ask me all the time, like, what nationality are you? I'm like, well, you know, my mom is Syrian and Czechoslovakian, and my dad was Haitian, and I think that's friggin' cool. What if people are just, like, being curious?
People ask us if, you know, we do speak English, but they'll kind of talk slowly and try to make sense of the words we're saying, or it's as if they're trying to process the fact that we actually are speaking fluent English. This is my first language.
When we think of the word aggressive, I think that is, you know, deliberate to make it seem like it's a little bit more than offensive, like it's almost a physical attack. You know, almost like they're touching you.
When I was at SPU, I used to have an afro. Kids would come up behind me and touch my hair. Like, no permission, I don't know them. Come up behind me and touch my hair. And I turn around and slap their hand away and like, what are you doing? I'm like, oh, it's just so soft. It just looks so soft, I just want to touch it. Look it, let me come up behind a white girl and start touching her hair. I'm locked up with the quickness.
Some people might see that as like nice, but I really don't. I feel like that's like kind of offensive to like ask somebody, can you touch their hair? Like if their hair's in a style that you're not used to.
It's this weird, you know, like fetish weird thing that white people have with our hair that's absolutely, I don't know what it is.
A couple years ago during Halloween was parking my car in a garage in downtown, and this older white gentleman saw me get out of my car, and he's very, very social, and he asked me what they call Halloween in my country. And I told him, well, they call it Halloween because this is my country. To be honest, I cared less about how he felt about being the microaggressor and more about how it made me feel. It's about the impact and not about the intent of the person who engaged in that behavior.
We've gone really far in saying it's all about what the person receiving it thinks that it means.
I also think it has to do with like people just not really having like a backbone. And I think we've become the society where these like kids are these like delicate orchids that just wilt once they leave the greenhouse, like just die.
I'd rather for them to just call me a nigger, because it would have been easier to take. It's easier to take just, you know, overt, you know, just racial slurs than the way people try to dress it up as not being a racial exchange at all.
I don't know. It just seems ridiculous. And there's just like so many things to remember now that you're not supposed to say, you can't do, you can't think it.
The people who commit the microaggression are like, do you mean I have to think about every little thing I say and do? It feels very painful. It feels very tedious to do that. And my response to that is yes, for you now, finally in your adult life, to experience this effort, it's about time, because the people that you have done this microaggression to have experienced it all their lives.
People who are hostile to the notion of microaggressions assume that games are being played, assume that this is actually driven by specific political agendas. It's the victim card. I think people don't understand that there's actually pain there. I'm really split on the issue of microaggressions, because I don't want to deny anyone's pain, but I also can't imagine a world where interacting with difference is done without pain.
Hope everyone was able to hear. What were you all's thoughts on that video?
It was powerful.
Yeah, it's definitely powerful. Was it anything that resonated with you or anything that really just grabbed your attention?
When the lady made the comment about what do they call Halloween in her country, and just like the way that she responded, I guess I could like relate to that because it happens like a lot.
Mm.
I think just everything in general just like resonated.
Mhm. Anybody else? Stephanie, Glennie? Do you guys have any thoughts on those? Did you guys have any thoughts as far as, so if you notice in the video, there were a wide range of different demographics of individuals talking. Did you guys thoughts as far as what certain groups of people said? Did that resonate with you, or did that have any connection, any thoughts on that as far as like different races or different demographics, and the things that they actually said? Thoughts on that?
I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah, I don't know why that stood out to me, like what certain individuals said, like what the African American woman said, and and then it was a Caucasian woman, and it was something that she said as far as, sorry, you mean to tell me, so like we're always gonna have to like making sure like we're careful of what we say and what we do. Like I felt like it just brought up the connection between power and privilege, and understanding that when you come from a more privileged demographics, you see things differently. I felt like she saw things different than the African American woman, or the woman that talked about when the man asked her how she celebrate Halloween in her country. And I feel like even the person who I think was one of the Pacific Islander individuals in it, she even brought that up of like people who are more on the privileged side, thinking, okay, so you mean to tell me now I always have to be cautious and careful? I just thought the connection really brought out the piece of power and privilege. Anybody else see that connection?
Now, since you mentioned it.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
I said, now, since you mentioned it.
Yeah, that really stuck out to me. I've watched that video like a couple of times, and it's like every time I watch the video, that always sticks out to me. So another question I have for you all, and I will hope everyone will answer, and I'll definitely answer the question myself. Can you guys talk about a time when you engaged in a microaggression, whether as a witness or perhaps said something that was offensive or hurtful? So it can be on both ends. It can be a time where it happened to you. It was an incident that you felt that there was a microaggressor that attacked you, or it can be you witnessed it on somebody else, or now that you're in this session and you might realize, hey, I feel like I've been the microaggressor before. So can you guys think of a time that has happened?
Does it have to be on the receiving side or us doing the microaggression?
It can be whatever you feel comfortable sharing.
Okay, so I just something that came to mind was at a previous employer, because it was at a financial institution, women were not allowed to wear pants. We had to wear skirts or dresses, but we always had to have nylons on at all times because they said that it looked more, that women looked more presentable that way, and that customers coming in um, would feel that they would like to do business with us because we would look more professional and just like looks nicer. And it in reality it comes down to how previously there were rules, those were the rules made by primarily like white men, and it was like it made them feel more comfortable. And then just this idea like it's not going to make me less professional if I'm wearing a nice pantsuit. Like it makes no difference if you're wearing a dress versus like pants. um eh, so that that was an example.
Mhm. Did they also, so what were did they have rules like professional rules as far as attire for men as well? What were was there anything that men had to adhere to as well?
No, I mean it was just like professional. I mean, probably just the tie, like a shirt and tie.
Okay. All right. Thank you for sharing. Stephanie, Glennie, can you guys talk about a time where you felt like either you were um, the aggressor or a time where, you felt like this incident happened to you?
I can't think of any at the moment.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
I can't think of a time at the moment.
Okay. Yeah, I think that like for me, and I think mine are just, ones that I could just think of. I think a lot of times like my name, I think a lot of times people assume based on my name that I'm not African American. So that, that's definitely something that I've encountered before. Um, Even encountered as far as like the way I talk. I've witnessed, things like that before. So I just know those are two things that I've witnessed as far as um, a microaggression as far as it has been connected to me. Glennie, did you have anything you wanted to elaborate on?
I was just trying to think of something, and I couldn't really think of anything for myself. Excuse me, I've been a little under the weather.
Oh no, that's okay.
I can't think of anything right now, but if I do, I'll just say excuse me and share it,
Okay.
if you
Can
don't
you guys
mind.
think of any ones that it might
Thank
not
you.
have happened to you, but you know that these happen? Like, what are some microaggressions that come to mind? So it might not necessarily happen to you, but you know that these happen.
Right. So I'm wondering if well, at least I'm thinking that a microaggression would be speaking of someone's hair,
Okay. Yeah.
where the person is and I can't remember exactly how it was said right now, but it wasn't nice. But and basically talking about a person's hair based on who they are, the color of their skin.
Okay.
So that
Yeah.
was really, and that was racially racially unjust as well.
Yeah. I definitely agree with that.
Mhm.
I know. So my son is very, very light complected, and he has like even like the blondish hair. And my parents one time were out in the suburbs, and they had to like stop at the store for something. And when they were at the register, they were like, "Oh, that's a really nice baby. Is it? Uh, is he the son of the people that you work for?" And and it was
Wow.
just like my mom was just like really offended. But at the same time, they saw They saw my mom. That's obviously like, you know, it's a little bit like darker complected. My dad was coming from work, so he just had on like his work clothes. And then they're like, "Oh, you're the help of like, you know, his parents." And my mother was so upset. You know, my son used to always be with my parents. So then my mom was just like, "That's my son," um, you know, because they love him like a son. And she's like, "Oh, are you?" But they even went to them like, "Are you sure?" Just like assuming, and they're like, "Oh, you know, it's just that he looks white." And it's like my son is 100% Hispanic. And then the lady was like, "Oh, and I didn't know, I didn't realize that you spoke English." So it was like a double. So not only
Oh
did
my
they find
God.
out, you know, they just assumed that they're like, "Oh, you know," they just thought that that wasn't their son. So, you know, it was like a double microaggression there with, you know, so
Yeah,
you get a lot.
that is by far the definition of a microaggression on so many levels.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, I'm so sorry that that happened to them. That is terrible.
Yeah, even I
Somebody,
think even to this day with my son, they always say like, "Oh, are you Irish?" And my son was like, "Just because you see my hair doesn't mean that like I'm white." He's like, "No, I'm Mexican." And
right.
they don't believe him, or they don't believe him that he speaks, you know, Spanish.
Yeah, and that's a microaggression either, especially like when you say, "Are you sure?" How can you ask somebody how sure they are of who they are?
Yeah.
Like what gives you the right, you know, to do something like that? So yeah, thank you for sharing. Anybody else? Go ahead, Stephanie.
I remember the little guy that he was playing football. He was African American, and they wanted him to cut his dreadlocks uh, in order to play in the not play in order to be in the wrestling match. And that little baby cut his hair, and I felt so sad for him. Said they
Mm,
know what's the rule book, and
yeah,
that was racial.
yeah, that is definitely racial.
I was
That
so
yeah,
sad.
that's definitely
And
definitely yeah, I agree with that.
he really wanted to play.
Mm-hmm. I definitely agree with that. Anybody else? These are some good examples. Any other examples? And even if you can even think about a time where you might have been the microaggressor, because you know, oftentimes, sometimes like we, you know, say things or we're not, you know, totally aware. Sometimes at the time, you know, we're just ignorant at times, and then we, you know, we say stuff or we do stuff. But has it been a time where like you might have been the microaggressor, and it's like now you've been able to educate yourself and realize and kind of analyze that that was wrong? I know a lot of times, you know, females might say, "Oh, oh, I would love to have a gay best friend. You know, those would be the perfect shopping partners or something like that." Like I've heard people say that, but when you really think about it, even though they're saying that in a nice way and trying to give a compliment, that's technically a microaggression. Because just because you're gay does not mean you like to shop. Has anybody else heard people say things and you know it just seems like it's common terminology, but when you really think about it and analyze it, it's it's you know, it's a microaggression.
That's interesting, Hannah, because I didn't think about that, but I've heard people say that
Yeah.
several times.
Mm-hmm.
Use that. Wow.
So true.
Yeah.
Any
That's
other ones have you thought about like that? Right. Well, thank you so much for sharing. I did want to show you guys one more clip, and I thought this little video was interesting too, because it was popular movies that we all have, most of us have probably seen, but it's like you see them, and when you're watching them, you by no means do you think, "Oh, wow, that was a microaggression." And until I saw this video, I realized, "Oh, wow, how microaggressions are sometimes labeled throughout media and out different movies that we see." So give me 1 second. Let me just pull it up. All right, 1 second. Just pulling it up now.
Enjoying the creativity of others through television and film is a pastime many enjoy. They offer a simple mode of entertainment, inspiration, and are a huge monetary gain for those involved in their creation. Few watchers pay attention and catch the subtle snubs targeted towards specific groups. These are problematic in many ways, but are often placed for comedic purposes or to add a dynamic to the storyline. What are these exactly? Well, they're called microaggressions. Microaggression is a common action that subtly and often unconsciously or unintentionally expresses a prejudiced attitude towards a member of a marginalized group. Now that you know the definition, here are some examples from popular works.
So, is it true? Is it better?
Wow. The fire department saying we have to clear out the bush. You said you were going to get Jose to do it.
He's your gardener, and why you don't tell him?
Lucy, you know I don't speak Mexican.
I'm not a Mexican.
I can make fun of you too. I could say that you sound like a freaking seal when you talk.
There are 5 primary types of microaggressions. The first is a racial microaggression, which is often a snub at one's racial makeup or ethnicity, as well as assumptions of language knowledge or identity.
So if you're from Africa, why are you white? Oh my God, Karen, you can't just ask people why they're white.
Hola, me llamo es Brian. Let's see. Nosotros queremos ir con ustedes.
Yeah, that was pretty good. But actually, when you said me llamo es Brian, you don't need the ace. Just me llamo Brian.
Oh, you speak English.
How unpopular Vietnam was.
I'm not Vietnamese, I'm American.
Of course you are.
The second is based on one's sexual orientation or sexual preference. It stereotypes those in the LGBTQ+ community, as well as diminishes those who identify or don't identify within it.
Is that you cannot make fun of a person for something or some action that they have done that they regret. You can only make fun of things that they have control over. Like Oscar is gay. That is his choice. We can make fun of that.
We already voted. Besides, Missy looks like an Uber hike.
Wait, back up. How do you know that he's gay?
Gay men know designers. Straight men don't. Know what?
The third is based on disabilities, mental or physical. This can include diminishing one's condition, imitating them, or even unequal treatment in comparison to those without the disability.
Always a weird, sad lip forever.
Thank you so much.
Okay, that's great. That's enough. Thank you. When you hang out, what exactly do you do?
Probably the same things you do. You may find this shocking, but it turns out that people with Down syndrome actually like doing exactly the same things that other people do.
Fourth is based on one's gender, and often includes over-sexualization, inequality, or even questioning one's masculinity or femininity.
Look, the way to make an impression is to relax, man. You gotta be calm. Chill out a little bit. Hurt, man! Whoa. What's up, baby?
The name's Veronica.
Ooh, Veronica, I like that.
You're a good-looking man.
Thank you.
Very pretty. Real soft, delicate features. They're real feminine, which is good for me because that would be a simple sort of transition, you know what I'm saying?
The fifth and most difficult to understand is environmental. This is a hostile or overall uninviting space that can be made up from a variety of the previous microaggressions.
Yeah, right.
Yo, Mook!
A couple of words of Thai. Okay.
Mookie!
So you know I'm so
What?
Come get no brothers up on the wall.
Man, ask Sal, right?
Hey, Sal, how come you got no brothers up on the wall here?
You want brothers on the wall? Get your own place. You can do what you want to do. You can put your brothers and uncles and nieces and nephews, your stepfather, stepmother, whoever you want. See? But this is my pizzeria. American Italians on the wall only.
Take it easy,
Huh? And you, hey.
This ain't no Superfly. What is your problem, man?
Linda, I don't understand what you are doing with him.
Oh, you know what I'm coming at you with, you big black mother of Linda. Mix it up in a pot, making it spicy.
Oh, my Lord.
Hey.
Within these 5 are 3 larger categories. Microassault, which is a deliberate verbal phrase said to cause harm to the victim.
a micro insult, which is more unconscious insensitivity that assumes something about the victim. And the final is micro invalidation, the less intense form that excludes one's feelings and self-esteem. After all of this, you're probably thinking to yourself, why should I care? Well, there are countless articles from individuals who have personally been the target of real-life microaggressions, and all experience a lack of self-worth, and are afraid to stand up to these seemingly small snubs at characteristics they cannot alter. The television and films using these does not directly cause real-life incidents. They offer a wider range of terminology that consumers can turn around and use in their day-to-day lives. As the world progresses and times change, individuals gain more awareness of their surroundings, as well as the words being thrown around them. And calling out subtle biases and prejudices may someday lead to a more competent society. To avoid sounding racist, homophobic, ableist, or sexist, words must be chosen carefully, and thought should be put into how we choose to verbally express ourselves. The simplest way to end these things is by altering the wording of the things we watch on a daily basis around the world, as well as not adopting these phrases shown in these works.
Did any of those kind of catch you for a loop? Not really, because I know some of those movies are movies that we've all seen, and it's like you've never even thought to even see that as a microaggression. Did anybody, was it any one of those particular that just really stood out to you?
Even though I've heard
So
of
one that's, I'm sorry, was someone talking?
Okay, Glennie.
Okay, so one that stood out to me was when he said he had a seal voice.
Mm-hmm.
And there, I didn't think about that. It was just pretty much, to me, I was poking fun, but at the person, but you know, when people do that, I didn't think about that as being microaggressive.
Yeah, because that individual actually had a disability. That was his disability.
That was the disability. Oh, okay, that's it. Okay,
Yeah.
got it.
Mhm.
Okay, I see. That makes perfect sense now. Yes, thank you.
No problem. Stephanie, you had a comment?
I was just gonna say that I have noticed a lot. So they think that African American guys are well endowed. When she said, "Is it true that it is better?"
Right, exactly.
Well endowed, and they think that it's gonna be like the best sex ever.
Yeah, as funny as it is, that's definitely, yes, that's definitely a microaggression.
and gay men, you know, just because men are gay, they think that they're like better designers.
Yeah, they like, finer clothes and no designers and different things like that. Yes. And even the one from Clueless, when Cher was like, "Oh, I don't speak Mexican," and I've seen Clueless a million times, and because I think she's from El Salvador, and she's like, she's not Mexican just because the individual speaks, Spanish does not mean that they're from Mexico. Like, there's so many countries that speak Spanish as their main language. So yes, I just know for years and years and years, that's a movie that I saw, but until within the last few years, and I really learned about this, I never saw it as a microaggression.
I didn't know. Well, I have been in the midst of Mexicans where they sit and eat, and it's like the guy was trying to talk a certain way while he was having dinner with another nationality and try to make himself fit in. I was like, I didn't think that was a microaggression, because when I'm having, even lunch with another nationality, I'm me. I'm me all the time. I don't change for nobody.
Yeah, but you know what? I'm glad you brought that up, because some people, that is true with some people though. Sometimes, depending on who you are and who you with, you do try to make sure you sound a little bit more professional, or you want to sound a little bit more educated. So sometimes, I'm not sure if that's what we consider a microaggression, but that that does come from systematic racism, as far as society teaching us that us as an individual and the way we talk as a community, or the way we are viewed as a community, the way we dress as a community, is not enough. So sometimes individuals who are about to go and maybe hang out with another race, or about to have a work lunch, you make sure you dress a certain way, or you make sure you sound a certain way, so that you can try, to show your best, or try to fit in. So I'm glad you brought that up, because a lot of times that is the truth. Any other thoughts on what Stephanie brought up, or has it been a time when you felt like you had to do that, or any more thoughts from the clip that we just watched? No? All right, so I'm gonna go back to my PowerPoint. Okay, so we talked about this already. So next we wanted to talk about, so based on limited knowledge and experiences or information taken out of context, this usually leads to presumptions about the attributes of a particular individual or group. So, those are assumptions. So these are assumptions that people might have been taught, or based on something that they might have saw, all of a sudden they have these assumptions. And then that, usually generates to stereotypes. So these are generalized about attributes of a particular soul group that disregards the individual's diversity within a group. Can you guys think of some stereotypes that maybe even that's connected to ourselves? What are some stereotypes centered around maybe the demographic that you're in? And it can be your sexual demographic, your whatever your race is, or it can even be a gender. What are some stereotypes that you feel are usually connected with something that's connected to who you are?
Oh, I stepped away for a moment. Our, where they say black people are lazy and they don't know how to read.
Yep, that's definitely a stereotype.
Or when they think that all Mexicans are either like gardeners or construction workers.
Okay, yes, that's a good one. That's definitely a stereotype. Anything else?
That all tall people can play basketball.
Yeah, oh, that was something that I got all the time growing up, because
Me too.
I'm 6 feet. And so I used to get that all the time. Oh, you don't play basketball? No, no, I don't. I've never wanted to play basketball. It's never something I ever wanted to do. So yeah, that's so true that all tall people can play basketball, or should be playing basketball. That's true. Or even when you think about, they say like, oh, all women are sensitive. That's not true. Anything else you can think of?
There was at work, there was one time a staff member, there was an Asian student, and a staff member asked him like, oh, does your family own a nail salon? And he was like, what? And he's like, what do you mean? He's like, yeah. He's like, does your family own a nail salon? Because all Chinese have like nail salons. And he's like, first of all, he's like, I'm not Chinese. But he was just like offended, and she honestly didn't think about it when she was like asking. It was just, she just thought that everybody, had like that, she related it to like because of like his race, that they own
Yeah,
a nail
because of
salon.
his physical appearance, you just assume. Yeah, that's definitely a good one. Yes.
Oh, here's a good one. I was a accounts receivable clerk for Leclerc Ports, is a part of CHA, and I did everything. And so I was interviewing them. I got to the nitty gritty, and a person that was in there with me was like, well, all people come from the project are nasty.
Mm,
Man, you want to say something like that?
yeah,
A lot of people think that just because people are from the project that they're lazy and they don't want to work. But it was people that was living in there that was paying $1,000 for rent, and I'm like, oh,
mm,
go get a home. But that place was home to them. That
that's
was
a
where
good one.
it
That's
originated from. So they wanted to stay there, and they had a lot of them had nice clean homes because I did inspections.
yeah, that's a good one. That people that live in the projects, are they don't want to work. They just want to live off government assistance. They're poor. They don't take care of their kids. Yeah, that's definitely. I can definitely see that being a stereotype of individuals who live in the projects. But then we have prejudice. So that's learned prejudgment about a social group to which we don't belong. Okay, and then we have discrimination, and that's action based on prejudice. When we act on our prejudice, we are discriminating. Can you guys think about a time where you might, even in society, even most recently within the news, can you think of a time where you've seen discrimination?
Oh well, it happens a lot at Denny's.
You say where?
It happened a lot at Denny's.
At Denny's? Oh yeah, that's true.
I have witnessed them spitting in African Americans' food. I was like, oh my God. Yeah, and then they'll say, well, we don't serve you kind of people.
Yeah. Even when you think about the incident with George Floyd and how, he was using a fake check, and then that was prejudice, and then the police act upon that prejudice that, that's been perceived amongst African Americans. So yeah. Any other topics or any other thoughts you can think of? All right. So what happens? So once all of this happens, this is the intent. So what happens? What is the impact on these things? So, you know, you hear people say, oh, a person, might have said something and it has been impactful on the individual. So then you start hearing people say of the other race, the people, or either other race or the other gender or whatever is connected to this particular microaggression. You might hear the term, oh, stop looking so offended, or get over it. Don't be so sensitive. But how can you judge somebody's feelings when something of this has happened to them? So that's when we get into the power and the privilege of when you are the microaggressor, because usually the microaggressor is the person of the power and of the person who has the privilege, whether it be the race or the gender or the sex or whatever demographic that the incident is connected to. So because of this often leads to an individual feeling isolated, an individual feeling hurt or excluded. Because sometimes, when something happens, you might shy away, or at a time where you might want it to be involved, now you decide, hey, you know what, I think I'll back up and maybe I won't entertain this particular activity or be a part of this particular group. So sometimes it makes you feel unsafe, especially depending on if it's a more conscious form of a microaggression and it was more of a deliberate form of a microaggression, then of course, then you start to feel unsafe. And like I mentioned before, you start to feel unwelcome. This can also lead to stress and anxiety, because if this is something that potentially is happening in the workplace, and this could be something that can be happening on a daily basis, that can lead to stress, that can lead to anxiety, which can have an impact on your physical, emotional, and your mental health. Any thoughts on that so far? So what can we do as individuals? And this is on both ends. I think it's really important to look at this as an individual, because like I said before, no matter how you look at it, we all at some point has probably been a person who has been attacked with a microaggression. And we probably all at some point, if we really, really think about it, we probably all have been the microaggressor as well. So it's like, what can we do? We can create inclusive spaces and communities. So we can create spaces where we're welcoming everyone. We're creating a space where everyone knows that everyone's welcome. And so people are being mindful of things that they say and things that they do, because this is a space where we welcome everyone. It's also a time for you to do your own work, and that's internal and external, because it also has to come from an internal piece too. And that means changing your attitude and changing your thought process. Because sometimes if you change your thought process and think before you speak, those external pieces that you might verbalize won't happen, because you have thought about it and you have changed your mindset to certain things where you don't even think that way. A spirit of influence. Be someone to influence others. Be a person to assist with educating others, so that you can be able to create a sense of educating individuals on being microaggressors or microaggressions within the space and the community around you. So then this also leads to inclusive versus political correctness. So you think of being political correct is behaving in a way that will gain you approval from another. It makes you look good to those in power. So that means like voting, friends, parents, Facebook friends, peers, so they will think favorably of you. So this is being political correct. So this is going with the flow of what your group of individuals that you connect with think. So, if you are, so for example, if the people around you cater to more of a political party or whatever, you are making sure that when you have conversations that you're connecting yourself and your thoughts and what you say to that, no matter if it's right or wrong, but you are putting your thoughts and your ideas and things you say to favor more of that particular place, as a form of making sure that you're gaining the approval of people within that group. But we want to be inclusive. And this goes back to the slide before, that when it talks about internal versus external, you want to make sure that internally you are being inclusive. And that means that by being a better person to others, being inclusive is a mindset and a commitment. So being inclusive starts with yourself personally. You are thinking, you are changing your mindset. So things that you might not have been taught was wrong, it's like now you're educating yourself and you're trying to put yourself in their shoes, where you think about, hey, now I see how that could be offensive. I see how I could have been wrong in that way of thinking, as far as saying those things or thinking those things. So a couple of other things I wanted to bring up as well, and what to do next, is recognizing the dismissive attitudes that are harmful. So, when you say something, you see a person's attitude or demeanor change, reflect. Did I say something wrong? Because sometimes you'll realize something was wrong based on the response that you received back. Engage in self-reflection to identify times that you may have been microaggressive in your personal or work life. So even now, like I mentioned before, we all probably, if we really think about it and reflect, we all probably have been a microaggressor at some time. So that's for, let's start thinking about how we as individuals can change our mindsets and start to strategically think before we speak, so that we are not throwing out microaggressions. Participate in continuing education activities. Always educating yourself when it comes to people that are different. Okay, always, what is their background? What is their history? What was like for them, for their people? Start educating yourself so that you can be mindful of negative things that could be hurtful to other individuals. And avoid making assumptions and labeling individuals. So be mindful when you don't ask questions as far as what is somebody's race or what is somebody's identity, especially now, as we that's why now a lot of times now we have we are utilizing pronouns, because now you cannot even, you want to make sure that you're even identifying somebody by the correct gender as well. So just also being mindful of all of that when you are attending to educating yourself. So I want to show one more clip, but does anybody have any more questions? And I think this clip will be, and I think this clip is really important, where it shows how an individual is a microaggressor, but when it's flipped, how it's like, oh wait, you just did that, but hey, now you're not realizing that you just did this to me and how it's wrong. So I'm gonna go ahead and play this clip. You know what? I might. Hopefully you guys can see it. I might have to do this so that you guys can see it. All right, here we go.
Hi there.
Sorry. I was trying to get that down.
Hi.
Nice day, huh?
Yeah, finally, right?
Where are you from? Your English is perfect.
San Diego. We speak English there.
Oh, no. Where are you from?
Well, I was born in Orange County, but I never actually lived there.
I mean before that.
Before I was born.
Yeah, like, where are your people from?
Well, my great-grandma was from Seoul.
Korean. I knew it. I was like, she's either Japanese or Korean, but I was leaning more towards Korean.
Amazing.
Yeah. Shasina. There's a really good teriyaki barbecue place near my apartment. So I actually really like kimchi.
Cool. What about you? Where are you from?
San Francisco.
But where are you from?
Oh, I'm just American.
Really? You're Native American?
No, just regular American. Oh, well, I guess my grandparents are from England.
Oh, well. Hello, Governor! What's all this then? Top of the morning to you. Let's get a small tea, small tea! Double, double, toil and trouble! Mind the gap! Beware, Jack the Ripper! Bloody hell! Pip pip! Cheerio! I think your people's fish and chips are amazing.
You're weird.
Really? I'm weird? Must be a Korean thing.
What was you guys' thoughts on that?
I love that video.
I know. I was like, in the way it's like, you know, he had no idea, but then it's like you flip and now you want to say like, oh, what she did is completely absurd. But sir, you just did the same thing. You know, any thoughts on that?
And then for him to like call her weird when he did the exact same thing.
Exactly, the exact same thing.
That was
It was okay.
example of do unto others as they do unto you.
Exactly. True definition of that. True definition of that.
It
Anybody
showed
else?
that it was okay for him. Like it was like completely okay for him to do it, but not with her.
Yep. Anybody else? Any other thoughts on that?
Don't poke fun of other people. He could have just, came straight out and asked her. My phone. Asked her, where was she from? What city or state, instead of trying to poke fun at her for him thinking she's somewhere from somewhere else.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else? Any thoughts on that?
Or I guess like she said, just be more mindful of like when you're asking like what nationality, like what, you know, like instead of just saying like where are you from? I mean, if that's really the question, then just, you know, just frame it differently rather than, I think it was more effective for them.
Yes, I agree. So after we've gone over, you know, microaggressions, and we've discussed intent versus impact, and we've gone over, you know, the 3 categories of microaggression, you know, what have you all gotten from this presentation?
I guess just like the different kinds of microaggressions, and I think for me, like sometimes there were some that I didn't really like realize that it happens so often, and I think even like when watching like some of the videos, you're just like, oh wow, like on some of them, I really didn't, you know, realize that like yes, that's being like offensive because you know sometimes like you know it's as subtle. But I also had a question for you on when they were talking about one of the types of microaggressions. Can you elaborate a little bit more on the environmental?
So if you look at the video, and that movie was Do the Right Thing. So have you ever seen Do the Right Thing?
No.
Okay. If you ever have some time, definitely watch that. It's a movie that takes place in the 80s, and it discusses it's different races in New York, and pretty much it's like a race war within New York, and no one can. It's like the African Americans are at one place, the Italians are in one place, the Latin X community is in one place, and no one gets along. But they're all living in this one particular community. And so when they talk about environmental microaggression, you have this pizza parlor that's in the heart of, you know, an African American community, and it's not inclusive. It's pretty much the opposite of being inclusive. When you go in there, and even though it is a pizza, you know, restaurant, and I guess this can also be kind of a back and forth, but it's not inclusive, and you see everybody that's there. But if you want to cater to a population of people that's living in this community, at some point, what they're trying to say is you would want to try to incorporate, you know, as many people as possible, and not just one particular population of people. Because as you see, he did that instead of addressing that, hey, I'm doing this because this is my heritage, but he took it from a standpoint, well, I'm Italian and we're only going to be showing Italians in this place. So he took it to more of a derogatory light, instead of maybe if he maybe just addressing it as that, you know, here we want to express our Italian heritage.
So environmental microaggressions, it's when it's like the environment is just like a hostile environment.
Yeah, it's more of like a hostile environment, because like I said, him having those pictures up, it can be taken both ways. Because it's like here, when I'm in Chicago and I might go to a Mexican restaurant, I might not always say, oh, why is there only, you know, things centered around Mexican culture here in this restaurant? I assume that, you know what I'm saying? However, what is the environment that's happening there? Like, are you being inclusive to everyone that comes here? Or are you only being nice and catering to Mexicans who come into this Mexican restaurant? So I don't think it was nothing wrong with him having Italian American pictures and making sure that the culture there is represented, but I think it's how he answered the question.
Okay, yeah, I think just in general, I just needed more clarification on what it really meant to be an environmental microaggression. So thank you.
Yeah, so it's more of like a hostile environment and not being inclusive.
Got it.
Any other questions? Any more questions of what we talked about today? Any thoughts or reflection pieces that you guys want to bring up today?
It was very enlightening. I knew about microaggressions, but some of them that I was not aware of. So I always try to be a conscious person. I always try to respect people, period. Even at first talk, I don't try to talk about people's nationality or their gender or whatever. I'm always very complimentary to people. Um, so, and in that too, it just taught me to boost up more who I am and how I treat people, and then be mindful of the ones that are around me. So, and I can hear it, I can address it to them because I speak up for people. I do. I don't like when people mistreat other people or say something, and sometimes, like as they say, it might have went over the person's head, but it ain't going over my head because I'm gonna address you right then and there. That's wrong.
It is, yeah. And I think that goes of, making sure that we are being inclusive and making sure that we're educating people around us and calling it out when we see it. Because sometimes individuals do not know, like I said before, sometimes it is unconscious and sometimes people do not know. But if you want to make a stance and you want to start educating people, you have to call it out.
It was like right now with like the snow, and I think it was like last week, and it was like really bad. There was my neighbor, somebody was like parked in front of her house, and now she's Hispanic, and the other person was also Hispanic. And because there was like no parking and they were just gonna leave and get something to eat, the girl was gonna put like a chair there. So the neighbor that lives like across, where the chair was going to be, she came out and she's like, no, you can't put it there. We don't do that here. And she's like, well, I'm just going and coming back. And she's like, well, you can put the chair here. We don't do that around here. This isn't 26th Street. This isn't Little Village. And it's like, well, that's like racist. She's like, oh no, but she didn't see it as being racist. She's like, well, I'm Hispanic too. It's not. It's like, no, like you're assuming that like that I'm from Little Village and they only do that in Little Village. And it was just an offensive comment for her just to like assume. And like she had no idea that it was she had no idea that was that is a form of microaggression. And it's like, yeah, like it's wrong.
Yeah.
Well, it's not offensive. She's like, well, it wasn't offensive because like, I'm Mexican too. And I'm like, it doesn't matter. You're just like assuming that she's from like, Little Village, and that's where it only happens.
Yeah, because what she's doing now is you're taking out like a race, but now you're more associated with like class. That's what you're doing. So assuming that, people in Little Village, maybe that's like, oh, that's ghetto in Little Village, or, that's of a lower class stance, and that's what they do there. So now, she thinks it's okay because she's of the same race, but now you are associating class or even location.
Yeah, because she's like, oh, we don't do that here. So when she called me, she's like, oh, and she got offended because of this, and it's like, well, yeah, like why would you make that comment? She's like, well, it's not a. I'm like, she's like, well, it's not a racist comment because I'm Hispanic, and it's like, no, but you telling her that, like, it is
because it makes it seem like, oh, because you live in another area that could potentially, I don't know, might be better to your stance. You think it's better, or if it's of a higher status or a higher class. Yeah, that's definitely, and that's a good point. Just bringing up microaggressions within one's own community. Yeah, that's I like that one. Anybody else have any more questions or thoughts? That's pretty much my presentation today. I hope you guys enjoyed yourselves and learned something that you can continue to reflect it, as well as continue to educate others about as well. And so hopefully you guys enjoyed today. I do want to, I'm going to put the evaluation in the chat.
More people need to watch this.
Yeah, I totally agree.
I took notes.
Me too.
this is the evaluation. I'm gonna put it in the chat. So if you guys want to take some time to do it really quickly, feel free.
You're still recording.
Okay, I will definitely. Thank you for letting me know.
No problem.
Either still recording, or sometimes I even forget to press recording, and then it's like, oh my God, it's been like 10 minutes. So I thank you for letting me know that.
So